Hi everyone, I'm Ian Failes from Befores and Afters, and I'm really excited to welcome you to this special Rebel Way session on a new course that Rebel Way is offering about Houdini Fundamentals. And it's being taught by FX supervisor Jason Slabber, who joins me now. Hi Jason, how are you?
Hey Ian, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm
Yeah,
good.
no,
Whereabouts are you in the world at the moment,
I'm
Jason?
good. Yeah, I'm in Cape Town, South Africa.
Oh,
Yeah,
very
so
nice.
yeah, sort of kind of born and bred. So I've always lived here and worked here.
Oh, awesome. I'm
Yeah,
talking to you from Sydney and
okay.
feel like we're kind of in the same zone of the world by those standards, even though we're on opposite ends.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Awesome.
Um, in this seminar, we're going to see some really great material that Jason's produced, including a trailer for the course and his own demo reel. And he's also going to run through what you'll learn in the course. But I thought I'd just ask you first, Jason, just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll roll the trailer after that.
Okay.
Tell everyone, what you are. I mentioned you're an FX supervisor, but you've worked in different FX roles.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's been quite a long journey. I've been in the industry for over 20 years or 25 years or so. Yeah, I started out kind of more as generalist, and then as I started moving in, probably around 2005, 2006, I got into Houdini, and yeah, we quickly changed the studio that I was with. We ended up changing our rendering pipeline to Mantra at that time,
Mm.
which kind of pushed me into a shading and lighting role. I ended up being the lighting lead for the facility for a few years. And then we eventually sort of kind of grew a little bit more and started taking on sort of bigger effects shots and stuff. And then I ended up taking on those effects shots, and that sort of transitioned me into being an effects person. And I ended up being the effects lead while still doing shading and lighting. So I guess a couple of years in, I ended up essentially being the HOD of the Houdini department, which was kind of, we were doing all the lighting and rendering and shading, and yeah, obviously all the effects in Houdini. So I kind of
Yeah.
oversaw the whole department.
I mean, that's something that I want to say up front as well, which is one reason I think people should look at this course is that Houdini has really become the backbone, hasn't it, of so
Yeah,
many visual effects and
yeah,
animation shops. Maybe initially just for effect sims, fire, water,
yes, yeah,
whatnot, and still is. But
yeah,
now with its procedural nature, doing the architecture behind lighting, rendering, and
yes,
shading has really become this sort of central component of a studio's pipeline, hasn't it?
yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I mean, yeah, the whole introduction with Solaris and, it's how it's developed, taken, from when we were working in Mantra and to what it is now is a phenomenal difference. And I think it's, yeah, at that industry standard of lighting, and like you say, so many people are starting to use it as their lighting tool.
Mm.
So yeah, and you can obviously choose your own renderer within that. So it's really, yeah, it's a really powerful system. So I think it's come a long way.
Yes. Well, rather than talk more about it right now, let's show people some really nice visuals. I thought we'd roll the trailer for this Houdini
Okay,
Fundamentals course. So
awesome.
go ahead and roll that. Wow, Jason, that's super cool. Obviously, heavily Star Wars inspired there with hints of Mandalorian, the Star Wars films and whatnot. Tell me a bit about the trailer and what you are aiming for in terms of promoting the course there.
Yeah. Yeah. So essentially, I mean, obviously, the Star Wars theme is, I mean, there's so many of us VFXs that are into Star Wars. So it's always a nice, appropriate thing to do. And no, it's just a good feeling with the music, and it feels good. But essentially, the course is aimed at purely at beginners starting out to the fundamentals. We're basically going in as somebody that doesn't know Houdini at all, and then just working your way through it. And we're taking quite a simple route. If you look at the shots, some of them might look quite complex, but they're actually very simple. We've kept most of the element builds, all the elements we're creating, like the rocks and all the little crates, and everything's all procedurally, or some of it's not even procedurally built. But we're kind of just keeping it really simple, not using like heavy coding or anything like that, just to really get people into the mindset of using Houdini, and just slowly building up kind of as the weeks progress into something that's presentable for a student.
And is the idea that they really will see all those different aspects of Houdini that we've just talked about before, which is definitely effect sims, because there's some nice explosions and water spray in that trailer. I mean, through to the earlier stuff we mentioned, which was lighting, shading and rendering.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll obviously start out, in your bread and butter side, which is your geometry creation, some procedural work, creating the buildings and stuff like that, and then we'll move on to some effects. We're obviously going to try and cover as much as we can as far as the trailer goes. It goes down to also the students and the progress that they make. So we're definitely going to work our way through what the trailer offers. It's just up to the student whether they, want to take that whole route, or they just want to maybe, simplify it and do a simpler version of that, because it is obviously quite an epic trailer. So so we just sort of we're trying to keep it simple and digestible for students as well. So.
And actually, that's something you mentioned. It's really for beginners, but I think people watching this might want to know, do I need to have any kind of background in Maya or animation or any kind of visual effects background to jump into this?
Yeah. I mean, from my standpoint and how we're going to approach the beginning, I would say no. It's going to help you, obviously, if you've got like a concept of 3D and if you've messed around with Maya or Blender or something like that, then you'll what a 3D viewport is and how to get around it, and you've got that sense of how 3D works. But that's really all I would say what you'd need. The rest of it is, we're going to go through how to navigate through Houdini, and all how nodes work and how they connect. And so essentially we're really trying to drive into the basics in the beginning and let students kind of get into it that haven't used 3D.
Fantastic. And I mean, I should tell people right now that you can go and see an overview of this course. It's a 10-week course at rebelway.net that outlines each thing that Jason will be doing each week. And as he mentioned, it really starts with, the general concepts of Houdini right through to geometry creation, and then basically creating all those things you see in the trailer. So that's over at rebelway.net. Jason, I thought now might also be a good time to show people your demo reel, just to get a handle of what sort of stuff you've been up to in the past couple of years.
Yep.
So maybe we should watch that as well, and then I've got a few questions about some of the work that you've done there.
All right, awesome. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen again.
Oh, well, awesome. I wanted to get people to see that demo reel early there, Jason. I think that's a mix of some of your personal stuff, but also work you did at Black Ginger.
Yeah.
What's maybe one of the more memorable projects you worked on recently using Houdini?
Yeah. So I would say, yeah, on specifically on that reel would be the Monster Hunter stuff. You know, it was quite a big project for Black Ginger, and I was in charge of quite a large part of what happened in that project. So it was a really good experience on that side.
And by then, you know, how much time had you had learning Houdini and becoming basically a real expert in it? I mean, It seems like you mentioned up front that you'd come from a different sort of background and then found Houdini.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm kind of want to share with everyone watching, like, what was it that, you know, you did with Houdini and kept learning that enabled you to do something like that Monster Hunter stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there was a progression. I mean, we did that Monster Hunter, what was it, 2017 or something around there. I'm not entirely sure the date. So I'd been using Houdini for quite a number of years already. And so it was just, it was almost like this kind of natural progression to build up. And then, yeah, obviously, we were lucky to get involved in it. And I was already then the lead in the effects side. So I was kind of dumped with the challenge of making simulation destructible trees, fully destructible trees. So a really good, difficult challenge. But I think that's the one thing that as a Houdini artist, it's always something that's always stood out to me is that, you know, Houdini, an effect shot is always a challenge. And that's the satisfying part, I think, of Houdini, because you can almost always take on that challenge and you can always get a result out of Houdini. You know, it's so capable and there's so many ways to do things that it's just about, you know, it's about finding the route that works. And it's just so capable. And I think that's what I always find amazing, and challenging is like that challenge becomes the reward that you kind of you get to that end point and you go, that actually worked. And it's like, yeah, it's really fun.
And I think an interesting thing that people watching might want to know is, given you've worked in a studio and you've worked on these big projects that need Houdini, where Houdini kind of sits in the pipeline. Do you want to talk a bit about that, maybe in relation to Monster Hunter work or others that you've done?
Yeah.
Because as we already mentioned, I think it's become the backbone of many pipelines. But, you know, there's other tools it has to play with in other departments.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because that hopefully will give people some context about why they should learn about Houdini at all.
Yeah. I mean, specifically, you know, in the case of Black Ginger, we were, like I said before, we went from a sort of fully lighting and shading pipeline using Mantra, and then into effects. So the whole, I guess our whole pipeline from animation, and we actually eventually before, well, Monster Hunter was actually, everything was animated in Houdini.
Oh, wow.
It was all rigged and animated in Houdini as well. So we really got entrenched in Houdini in the facility. And so all our, our pipeline tools, our exporters, importers, everything was geared around Houdini, how we would get data in and out. The assets department would have exporters that would obviously allow us to bring stuff directly in. So it really became quite a central part of our pipeline. It was really like the core, I would say, the core kind of use case.
Yeah. There's another cool shot in that demo reel of a flower attacking people on a street.
Yes.
And I really wanted to ask you about that. That's super cool. What project is that from, and how did you approach that?
Yeah, so that was a project for, I think the product was called Flonase. It was originally, the previous ad was actually done by MPC, as far as I remember. And they didn't have capacity to do it, to do the newer version. So they basically gave it to us to do. So they supplied us with the monster, the flower monster. And then we did some animation on it, and then I did all the pollen effects on it. The idea was, it was like this monster shooting out this hay fever, attacking people with the hay fever.
That's how I feel right now in Australia.
Anyway. Exactly. Same here. That was a great project. It was quite a quick turnaround as well. So just a couple of shots, and it came out really nice. It's like one of those fun little projects.
Oh, very cool. Well, I think we could turn back now a little bit to the fundamentals course. And actually, really interestingly, some people have asked some questions. I'd say these are Rebel Way users and fans and aficionados of the Great Rebel Way training. And I thought we'd just go through some of these questions because, they really get to the point of what's in the course.
Yes.
So, Jason, one of them is literally asking about, are you covering Karma, the new renderer, and Karma XPU in the course?
Yeah. So everything in the course is rendered with Karma. Currently, most of it is CPU based. So essentially what we're doing is at the moment, we're trying to, with obviously the Houdini 20 and Karma XPU coming out of beta, we sort of now, I'm kind of looking into and sort of developing shaders and to see if we can take the course into a full XPU experience, because I think also from a student point of view, it's a lot faster to render and get shots or turntables out in XPU. So we can't obviously promise that it's going to be full XPU, but we'll definitely be covering some XPU with and material X shading.
And Jason, I understand you've got some breakdown materials that show some of the work from your demo reel, including Monster Hunter. I'd really like to see a bit more behind the scenes of that.
Yeah, for sure. Let me just share my screen. I can take you through some stuff. All right, can you see that?
Got it.
Yeah, cool. So this is, one of the shots from Monster Hunter, just while it's playing. So essentially what I had to do for this entire project was I was in charge of, just going to pause there. I was in charge of setting up the tree destruction. Actually going back, I was in charge of how we're going to treat the whole forest as a whole. So it came down to how we're going to lay it out, because we were using Houdini obviously for layout and rendering. So, and we were using speed tree trees. So I built a little kind of procedural system based on point clouds to scatter the trees around quite efficiently with just transforms or height field scatters. And then once the layout guys were finished with that, they would export just a point cloud. And basically that would initiate the trees at render time. which swap out the trees. And then what the effects guys did, we got the point cloud with proxy trees. And then once we had the animation of the creatures running through the forest, we would then run that through some stuff just to isolate the simulation area, and then break out the simulation trees, swap them with simulation trees, and yeah, then that went into the next level of what I had to do. So the trees were all based on vellum. It was kind of one of the earlier versions of vellum, actually. So I had basically 3 layers of vellum. Was the trunks, the branches. Actually, I had some fine branch ones, and then had leaves. So there's actually, when the trees get hit, the leaves come off in some parts, so you actually can't even see it. There's so much fine detail here. But yeah, it was a really tricky process to get all this data done and out and rendering. But yeah, I was super chuffed with the end result. I also ended up having to do the fire for this shot, which was quite a nice challenge. And with this lighting, it actually looks quite nice.
I love the interactive lighting, obviously, coming through the forest there and the breaking branches. That's a really stunning shot.
Yeah. So then this shot here, this was actually our Euro shot, was the one we dev'd first, just out of interest. So as you can see, there's tons and tons of data. There's all these like extra little branches and stuff I had to kind of separate out from the tree sim setup, and I built a little almost, let's call it a branch destruction scatter tool that we would just throw at the scene. So as these Apsaros creatures were running through, we would just almost emit these branches in a pre-roll and just let them fly through the air, and kind of then ended up interacting with the characters. So it was a really fun project. And then the characters are the digi doubles. They were all animated in Houdini as well.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah. Let me ask you about that while we're talking about it. I mean, people have been using Houdini for animation for a long time, but it's not necessarily known as an animation package.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you've noticed it happening more and more, and the powers of the procedural side of Houdini must work well for Houdini in terms of rigging, but also animation as well.
Yeah, it's definitely come a long way. I think in this instance, we were still using object level rigging, which is a little bit out of where KineFX is, but it's really, that procedural nature is still there. So I think it's a really powerful tool for animation. And I think the benefits also now going forward is once you've got that animation setups and stuff in Houdini, then you've got access to your bones and everything else, and your skinning, and it's just so much easier when you get into effects. You've got so much more data that you can actually easily access. So it's a really, really cool kind of progression, I think.
Yeah, no, those KineFX tools are amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, this breakdown is super cool. What else have you got there, Jason?
Yeah. Then I just wanted to chat about this Nestle dragon. So this was quite an interesting one, and I guess in some ways it's fairly simple, but not. This was kind of my initial dev render test that I did. So I did the milk, obviously. The challenge why I wanted to show this was actually an interesting one, because it's difficult when you've got, like, I wanted these milk sprays, but obviously the dragon is flying through the air fast and it's moving everywhere. So you actually need to delete the trails, whereas that's kind of really unrealistic. So it becomes quite a tricky challenge to find that balance of where they're actually just disappearing and still making it feel decent, like it's not just it's not just been eaten away almost. So And then obviously they wanted specific areas like this, the tops of the dragon, they wanted almost to feel like a mane of sorts, coming up the top and the tail here at the end, so I had to create specific, areas of emission just to get that look, and then obviously try and find the right kind of, surface tension to create that feel of it being thin milk, but still being a mane. And yeah, so it was quite a good challenge. And then moving on to that, then we had to do trees. All these trees were obviously scattered in Houdini. And we used similar system to what we did in Monster Hunter, and was just really scattering the proxies and then swapping them out in render time. But one of the big things in these shots was I was in charge with these plant decay setups. And that was quite a nice challenge. So just getting them based off as a test is another shot one. Just moving on, so here's a kind of a dev test so the idea was there was this monster coming through the scene and he was basically decaying everything. So I had to do kind of a position-based decay of all the trees and plants. So it came out fairly well. And then, there's another test slightly further on. So kind of these are early tests, but gives you the idea of what I had to do.
And I think for beginners, one thing to point out is how would you do that without Houdini? I mean, what we're kind of saying, I think, Jason, is that it's a lot more of a manual process. If you're going to use traditional tools. Houdini just lets you automate some of it. Obviously, the artistry is still there, but that's kind of the power of Houdini, isn't it?
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. So it's sort of it's leveraging that and taking things to be able to do it at a larger scale like this. Like for instance, this growing ones, it was the opposite side of the commercial, was everything's coming back to life, and to basically do both of these systems, in like kind of 2 weeks worth of work, I wouldn't imagine being able to do it in any other software. It's just super efficient, and you've got some basic tools that you can use just to be able to help you along. And obviously once you gain experience and know Houdini, then you go, okay, I can use this and this and this, and then you start kind of really speeding up the process of how you develop things. And it just becomes so much more achievable to do these kind of bigger shots quicker.
Absolutely. The next question that I wanted to ask you from these questions was, I think a really good one. Someone's asking, are we going to make an entire project from A to Z in the course, or is it more about separate lessons?
Yeah, so we'll basically be building the entire project. But what we're doing is we're approaching it in sections. So it's kind of, like we said earlier, we're starting with the basic modeling of the building, then we're kind of going into the next level of scattering stuff around it. So we'll basically build all the little elements and then kind of bring it together slowly into the full project. And like I say, whether the students have the capacity to, do the entire, shots, or just maybe like a little bit of a focused area, which might be a little bit more easier to achieve in the time frame of the course. But we'll definitely be trying to push as much as we can out of that, what they can do with that trailer, and try and get them to build the entire shots.
Great. You're obviously, I think, a beta tester of Houdini, and have done that with side effects for a little while.
Yep.
But, Houdini releases new features all the time, although as we're talking, Houdini 20 was just released and has a bunch of new things.
Yes.
Are some of those new features able to be featured in the course?
Yeah, so again, we kind of, obviously, a lot of the stuff has been developed already. And what we'll be doing is, like I say, we're especially like on the rendering side and stuff, we'll be looking a little bit more at changing some stuff up as we kind of gear up to release the course. We're sort of re-recording some videos and just getting a little bit more up to date. And if we find there is certain elements that we can kind of change and improve just to get it in line with Houdini 20, we will. There's no specific things that stand out right now that will be included. We would like to maybe do a lesson on the clouds. I think that's quite a nice thing to kind of just go through the cloud setups. I'm quite keen to share that with people. So maybe we'll cover that in a short lesson.
Great. Someone's also asked here, does the course cover creating your own solvers?
Yeah, no, definitely not. This is
this is beginners.
This is not. So you want to kind of you want to start looking at once you've done the fundamentals, then you can start going into some of the other courses. For this course, a lot of the times, even for the effects, we're starting out from the shelf tool, dropping that, and to see what the flow of data is and what nodes you need. Just keeping it at that core level of Houdini.
And sort of similarly, someone's actually asked, Rebelway has a course called Introduction to Houdini Effects.
Yes.
And they're wondering what the difference here is with Houdini Fundamentals.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, so the effects course is that deeper dive into simulation, how to manipulate simulation, and with your dops, and then obviously pops, which is your particles. So how to get a little bit more control, and etc. So I'd say that's kind of your next level effects after the fundamentals. If you want to go into the effects side of things, it's definitely worth progressing into that.
Yeah, these are great questions that a survey of Rebelway users brought, because I think they're really getting to the nub of why you would want to sign up to this course. Yes. I mean, someone's also asked that there's another course that about Houdini Fundamentals by Sir Corbin, and just wondering what the difference is there with that course.
Yeah. So obviously, Corbin's one was done a little while ago. So, Houdini changes quite quickly, and it's quite fast moving. So this, I would say, is just a little bit more up to date in terms of workflows and So my approach is really, what I want to do is I want to try and get students not just to learn Houdini, but I want to take them through that and do the lighting and shading to give them something that's presentable. So something that's it looks nice at the end, and they can go, wow, this is something that they can put on their reel as a junior. So that's kind of where my angle is, just to not just, I mean, Corbin's stuff is great, but I want to sort of up it to a next level. So.
Absolutely. I was going to say also, one of the questions here, we've talked about the fact that it's for beginners, but people are curious what sort of hardware, software setup they might need to use Houdini, but to follow along with you as well.
Yeah. I mean, so I would say, just like at least an 8-core CPU. I mean, I guess looking at side effects as minimum or recommended requirements would be ideal. But 34 to 64 gigs of RAM. Obviously, simulation stuff is quite RAM intensive, so it's good to have decent RAM, and then decent size hard drive, 1 to 2 terabytes. Again, the simulation side of things, when you're doing smoke sims and stuff like that data that gets put onto disk is quite a lot. So that's quite important. And then just a fairly decent GPU. Doesn't have to be break the bank stuff, but it's like just something that will be rock solid. So a nice NVIDIA card.
Nice. Yeah. I think people hear about Houdini, and we've already mentioned Karma and XPU. People start hearing about some other terms like VEX and TOPS and all those sorts of things with Houdini. But again, they're the kind of questions that have been asked. I imagine some of that is a bit higher level, and possibly you might mention them in the course. Is that right, Jason? But you're not necessarily covering them in depth.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll definitely do some basic comparisons. So, speaking of VEX, I lean more towards VOPs, which is your visual creation of networks rather than coding it. Essentially, they're the same thing, but obviously VOPs is a little bit more visual. So I think it's a little bit more easier to digest. And what I'll be doing is we can do a simple, like I'll do a simple VOP, and then as an example, I'll do a VEX comparison. But it will be at a very basic level, just to give users the idea of the comparison and what they are. But to the most parts, I'd say 98% of the course is got no VEX or no wrangles as such, no heavy coding. Try to keep it simple. So yeah.
And one thing that I often ask tutors is, you can watch you doing your lesson, but what sort of things would you expect people to do in their own time? What sort of assignments might they be given, that sort of thing, in terms of the week-to-week learning?
Yeah. So, we'll definitely put out after each week an assignments, and then sort of be involved to, feedback on the assignment and kind of help them along. And just really help them craft what that assignment is, not just say, okay, we'll do this and then it's done. What we want to do is try and just really help them and make a better kind of product at the end of the day. So that's really what we want to do, is kind of reward them with a little bit more feedback and help them achieve a better product.
Yes, because having not studied for a while, I feel like, once you engage in a course and over 10 weeks, you really want to be motivated to continue. And it sounds like doing it that way gives them a bit of a rewarding journey as they're learning Houdini there, Jason.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's the idea, is just to be involved. And obviously we can't be involved 24/7, but we'll definitely be as active as we can.
Oh, awesome. One thing that you're going to produce is obviously using this imagery from Star Wars related projects. Yes. And, they're building up this geometry, they're lighting scenes, rendering scenes. And I really love that idea that a junior person can then have this on their reel. Maybe, people are always asking what should go on your reel and how to put a reel together. Let's talk about that briefly, because you will get content out of this course, right? To put on your reel. What do you see as the benefits of that, and how would you add that to an existing reel that a junior might have?
Yeah. So, that is obviously an interesting one. And I think the difficult part for me with a course, with any kind of training course, and as juniors do, is they tend to just kind of replicate what they were taught. And that's not really something you can put on your reel. So I think that's where the assignments come in. So you kind of doing something in a similar vein to the course, but not entirely the same. So, or it could just be a different angle. You're using the same structures or whatever, but maybe just a more dynamic angle, slightly different looking explosion, or just to make it a little bit more interesting and different to what everyone's seen already. And I think that's the kind of standout stuff we want to promote and try and get people to do, and understand that you don't want to just copy paste almost. It has to be slightly unique and to show your capabilities.
And Jason, one of the final questions, I really like someone asking this because I think it's quite bold, but it is relevant, is about discounts. Whether people have undertaken other courses at Rebelway, especially in Houdini. What can you tell them about any discounts that might be available?
Yeah, I mean, there will definitely be discounts available, and I think users will be getting emails accordingly. You can also contact Rebelway support and to see what kind of offers they can offer up to you.
Great. Well, Jason, it's been really fun hearing about your new Houdini Fundamentals course. I, for one, would like to take it as someone that probably should try and get up to speed on Houdini. And I just love that trailer, and to think that I'd be able to create something like that is super cool. Anything else you want to share about the experience for people when they do this 10-week course? Basically, you can find out much more information at rebelway.net. But Jason, anything else you want to share for people looking to sign up?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think just from my side is just be prepared to kind of put in a bit of work. It's VFX isn't such, it's not an entirely easy game, and I think you've got to be motivated and be consistent. And I would, it's not to scare people away. I think it's a very good introduction and quite easy to digest, but at the same time you've got to continuously apply yourself and be part of the journey through the term of the course, let's say. Otherwise you're going to fall behind. So I think just being on top of it and staying motivated is key.
Well, I think people are going to be super motivated about working with a Razor Crest model and a X-Wing model and blowing up a desert building. Well, Jason, just wanted to thank you for going through that, especially breaking down your demo reels, and also talking about the course, and think we learnt a lot about what people are going to learn at Houdini. So wish you well with the course, and wish everyone who's taking up the course well too. It's been really fun chatting to you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Ian. It's been great chatting to you. And looking forward to getting stuck into teaching this course. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jason. Bye, everyone.
All right. Cheers.